Okay, so we are back with Anne with an E, Season 3, Episode 9, the penultimate episode. Again, thank you for all your support. I haven't forgotten about the show. I still love the show, still love this audience. I'm happy to do more videos about Anne with an E later if people are interested in that, like video essays or analysis or whatever people would like, and maybe a Q&A about like people's questions about things that I didn't cover. Just let me know, keep me updated with that. But for now, let's just get into Anne with an E Season 3 Episode 9. I mean, I'm so happy Coquette is home, but it's so traumatic.
Louis, a glacier we do. Say it. Look how quick I am. This is for your own good. Stop behaving like a stupid Indian. Delane, you wanted me to go to that school. They told me I'm worthless.
I'm glad that her mom is being empathetic and understanding and sticking with her, for sure, because there, unfortunately, are a lot of parents who would react badly to that type of shift in behavior. Okay, full braid, damn. That's a fluffy braid, I love to see it. I do have a braid in, by the way.
Why would he ask me so late? I love him. I told him to marry her.
That is ill-advised.
Do not make the same
I was gonna say,
mistake
with his daddy.
Tell him, right now.
Don't tell me she's gonna go and then Winifred's gonna be there, or he's gonna be like, oh, I got engaged, or like whatever, and then she's gonna be like, oh, okay, never mind, and wait until the last minute. It will be. I just know it will be. They're gonna have to have the confession in the last episode. Which again, I think maybe if I knew that there were more seasons of this, I would be less upset about, because I'm like, okay, period, slow burn, okay, we're laying the groundwork.
I love him. I have to tell him now.
Matthew's like, huh? Oh, very sweet, very sweet. I can't believe we're finally here. This came so quickly. What?
It's like you read my mind. What a welcome apparition. May I speak with you, sir?
Dance with us.
Her? Him? I thought he'd be coming to talk to Diana and be like, girl, does Anne like me or what? What's going on?
I have to see about the baby.
Oh, please kiss her for me. I can chill myself out.
Sebastian's poor mom is like, what is going on in this town?
I love you. Anne.
Is she actually gonna lead this?
P.S. May I please have my pen back?
Oh. I love that she went there, like, looking like this. Like, she's so disheveled. She's literally straight out of bed. But it was too important. She was gonna just go see him like this and tell him. No! I knew! Some shit like that was gonna... Okay. Okay, whatever. Oh, Delphine! So cute. That's actually probably the cutest baby I've ever seen in my life. This is so interesting and random.
But it belonged to my mother.
Oh, family.
And it's-
can come later.
It's perfect for Anne. The green. Wow, her mom is amazing. Can they even do anything? I mean, I'm sure... they shouldn't be able to, but I'm sure they probably could. Somehow, some way. Even though that makes literally no sense whatsoever. But when has that ever stopped anybody from colonizing or, you know, appropriating or stealing or pilching and, you know. I don't know that that's gonna be satisfactory for them.
Lots of kids here. It's like a nest. We should grab more.
No! I was wondering if she was gonna have a part in it. Bash, read it, please, please, please. With Coquette and that storyline, like, I'm not, you know, I know I'm, like, gasping. I'm not actually surprised, right? Like, I understand the history, and someone advised me to do more research on it with Canada in particular, and I did. So I'm not surprised, but it's just so I don't know, it's just never gonna stop being jarring, I guess. Similar to how some of Sebastian's storylines, I'm not surprised that it's happening, but I'm horrified nonetheless. It's just so wrong.
Start by being less strict with my daughter.
She's only a baby, but she can feel it.
So you want me to spoil her?
No spoil. Love.
Ooh, what a distinction.
Since you can't stand me and I don't love you, I'll leave.
That's not what I said.
So classic. Such a classic dynamic for parents in general, but probably moms in particular. Very much the like, oh, well, I guess you hate me. I guess I've never been a good mom, like that type of thing. Although I do understand that a lot of this is very much rooted in, like, the culture as well. I want to be clear about that I understand that. Oh.
Well, a search for a partner as weird and wonderful as the one I lost, even under the guidance of Rachel Litt.
I'm familiar with her guidance.
Yeah.
Give me mere weeks to find a wife, which is really no time at all. When
Let's
I
put
see
two and two
Mary
together,
every day.
people.
Fortunate enough to have part of her with you still.
Yeah. It's a very interesting, it's a bittersweet thing, very painful, but, you know.
If I disappoint, I have dozens of chances with multiple children.
It's true. This is a very deep, interesting, layered, nuanced conversation.
All just making it up as we go.
Is that going to be his realization that his mom is doing her best? Look at that. Water in a jar. something so wholesome about that, I don't know.
Into improper fractions.
You said never to do anything improper.
This lesson is beyond my comprehension. Please take over.
Very interesting. Thought you didn't want me to learn more than I needed to in the finishing school.
Surely we can reason this through.
I don't know about all that, Anne. I don't know what's very reasonable about what just happened.
She
says.
I believe I understood.
I could cry. That's very profound. Shit. I actually love them so much. I don't know. Like, them as a couple, I'm just like, absolutely. They're a king and queen. Let's get a spin-off of them. Such good parents, it seems like. Oh, you're pissing me off now. You're pissing me off now, show.
Making a life here isn't easy for outsiders.
That is one of the things about them. They are compatible in that way. Obviously, it's different, but she is also an outsider. She's also not totally welcome. Someone go talk to Gilbert! I'm trying to think if I was in that position. What would I do for my best friend? It's tricky. Because if it doesn't work out, then it's like, okay, well, that was embarrassing. You just, like, you know, told my secret to everyone or whatever, but I think I would go to him and be like, girl, she loves you. Don't do this. God, Anne looks so old. What a journey. What a journey this show has been. That's crazy. It's fine. It's whatever. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not upset about that. Whatever.
This is a school, not a prison.
Yeah, for real.
Leave her be.
No!
Whoa.
I could...
Please, calm down.
Oh, like you didn't bring those guys with the guns out.
Let me explain.
No.
I do not have the authorization to release any children.
Who fucking does then?
You need to discuss this with Father Beck.
Okay, well, let's get him
Unfortunately, he is away
here.
for a fortnight.
Shut the fuck up. I can't. I can't.
We're not leaving without our child. We will
No,
camp
no.
here.
Fine by me. Her presence here will speak volumes.
Marilla will be sick with worry.
We can send Marilla a telegram, and I'm sure the crop can hold for a fortnight. This is too important.
And you know, it can't wait, and I have to be there.
So go then, if you don't care.
Of course, I care, but just...
I am not abandoning them in their time of need. I am staying.
We are very grateful for all you've done. This will all be solved when the priest arrives. You can go now, with our thanks.
We can't just go. We can't just go. I'm not leaving. I can't.
Wake with us.
I'm scared for them.
Oh,
And they're... Fuck. They're so sweet for... I mean, they're not really telling the truth. You know? Being like, oh, it's a misunderstanding. Like, it's not. And I think they know that.
Kakwet is not an orphan. She has a home. Parents who want her, love her.
I hadn't even thought about that angle from, like, Anne's perspective, but yeah.
If it's printed in a paper and everyone in Canada finds out,
But would people care?
the outrage will change everything.
Maybe I'm just too, like, cynical. But I'm just like... No. This is not gonna be what they...
Good evening to you. God willing, we will kill the Indian, but save the child. So you must leave. Leave immediately or face arrest. If you care about the welfare of your child, you'll do as I say. Thank you, gentlemen.
I was gonna say, that priest is there. I was gonna say, he's not away on a fortnight, for a fortnight. I feel so sick. They better get... But is it realistic? Would they get her back, you know? Ugh, so horrific. Orilla, bless her. That you get to be with your child again. They don't.
Or did he just throw it in a fire?
I wonder what my assumption would be. My Delulu self would probably be like, he probably didn't get it. He doesn't want to be with me? Probably means that he didn't see it then.
There are plenty worse things than hurt feelings.
That's a great point, and that is a very important lesson to learn, and...
What does that say about you, Mom? That you're nicer to white folk than your own family?
You think I tortured your father?
Why didn't you want me to have anything nice?
You wanted nice. I wanted you to survive. The white people I know didn't want black people to have anything. And your father...
My father was lynched. Why didn't you tell me?
You are my one son. All I had left.
So unfortunate, because I completely understand, like, what she's saying, and there is a lot of it that's, you know, correct, unfortunately. Is she gonna come across the thing and think that he, like, stomped it into the ground or something?
Really, including Gilbert. Is he home?
Gilbert left for Charlotte town early this morning.
Oh.
I did the best I knew how.
The series is ending off on so much more of a bitter note than sweet than I expected. No! Okay, so now for the discussion section for Anne with an E, Season 3, Episode 9. There are basically three main storylines. There is the Kakwet storyline, there is the Sebastian and his mom storyline, and then there is Anne and Gilbert, of course. Technically, Anne and Gilbert is kind of like the least complicated one. It's really reminiscent of a lot of classic tropes and dynamics and miscommunications and things like that that I'm used to, but they do drive me nuts, as you can see in this episode. It's like, I just knew they were gonna do stuff like this, where they just kept missing each other, they kept misunderstanding each other, and, you know, it's almost too late, and yeah, I mean, it's classic. Kind of love it, but I also kind of hate it. To be honest, it's interesting because it's like, you know, this has been such a build-up for Anne and Gilbert, but it does feel a little, if I'm completely honest, a little choppy to me this season in particular. I wish they would have had a more gradual introduction to it, because even though I think they started out the season with the undertones of Anne and Gilbert, there were a few episodes there where they kind of just abandoned that completely, like they didn't really have any hints toward it. So then when it started coming full force in these last few episodes, it feels very kind of like sudden and jarring. Not that like, oh, they shouldn't be together, or oh, it doesn't make sense that they're together, but it's just, I'm like, oh, we had kind of put that to bed a little bit, or we had kind of put that on the back burner. So it's interesting now that it's like full front and center, going full speed, and it does feel like a lot. It's like, oh, she's in love and they're gonna be together now. Like, and they're like confessing their feelings to each other. It feels pretty overwhelming, but I'm sure that's due to just like time constraints and the scheduling, and probably maybe not being guaranteed to be renewed for the next season. It feels a little choppy that way, but that's not really their fault. But overall, I mean, we have had 2 seasons of build-up for them, so it does... I'm not saying that it's, like, out of nowhere or anything like that, by any means. I mean, you know, you've seen my reaction to them as a couple over time. But it does feel very like, I'm like, oh, okay, the time has come. Like, we're doing it. This is happening. And it's been pretty full force these last episodes, which makes sense because they only have so much time. But again, I'm like, oh my god, can't we just do it? But I mean, this is the penultimate episode. I'm a little surprised they even dragged it out this long, but I guess they want to have a final confrontation or like declaration or union in the finale, which makes sense. So anxiously and eagerly awaiting that, because this other stuff, I'm like, please, for the love of God. I think also because there's been so much, I think because I know there's so little time left, and also because there has been so much of this for Anne and Gilbert prior, that I'm just like a little frustrated by it, but I understand it as well. Like, I get it. You want to have momentum leading up to that moment where they finally are, you know, getting together. So that makes sense that they're doing that for these last episodes. As for Sebastian and his mom, that's just a very, very fascinating storyline. I mean, I cannot talk enough about this storyline. The different dynamics that are at play here, the different, like, generational trauma, the different perspectives of a child versus a parent, they're both so valid. They're both so right and wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's, if you're a parent, from your perspective, if you feel like you've done everything that you can and you've done the best that you can, and then your child is there saying, it's not enough, then that's really frustrating. But on the other hand, if you're a child and you didn't get what you needed from your parent, you know, you can't really change that. And that just is what it is. So it's a very frustrating position to be, I think, for both people, and very frustrating and difficult to communicate that and to like move past it, especially if there are these other barriers in the way. And I think in their particular case, there's a lot of personality differences. There's a lot of, they had different upbringings, probably cultural things as well. Obviously, there's just a lot of like history there that is influencing this. So it makes it really complicated, because obviously I lean more towards Sebastian's side. Often I do when it's coming to a parent-child dynamic. I will often side with the child a little bit more, even if I can understand where the parent is coming from, having been, you know, a victim of like childhood abuse. But I think this episode did a really good job of kind of giving you more insight into her perspective and why she did what she did and how she went about things, because I always knew there was a reason, and much of it I could suss out. Like, I was like, oh, well, she just has a very different personality. She was obviously raised very differently. She has a lifetime of, you know, like servitude, working for white people. That's a very different kind of like existence than now she's being brought into with, Avonlea, with, you know, Gilbert and Sebastian being basically brothers. That's very jarring. That's very confusing. I don't blame her for being skeptical of that or confused about it whatsoever. It's a protective measure. Like, it's self-defense. And, you know, when you're in a state of danger like that, you can't really think about luxury, if that makes sense. Like, everything else but just like living and existing and surviving feels like a luxury. So her being cold or whatever to protect them, or to try and make sure that Sebastian wasn't taken advantage of, or that he wasn't hurt by people, that he didn't get too comfortable around white people, like things like that, that's out of necessity. And while obviously it doesn't apply to this particular situation with Gilbert, it does make sense that that worry and that fear is still there. And it's been, you know, grilled into her, and she's right. You know, it's very valid. And I think learning about the situation with their dad, about him being lynched, like, that makes total sense and just adds a lot to the whole thing. It's like, oh my gosh, no wonder. And you can really understand her point of view and why she is the way that she is and why she acted the way that she did. But I think it's also interesting talking about generational trauma. You know, he's trying to alter the way that she behaves for Delphine's sake, which I think is very interesting. And he's very right that even if it's not explicit, that kind of energy, that negativity, that coldness can really seep into childhood and being raised, even if it's not explicit. Like, even from the time that you're a baby, you feel that stuff, you absorb that stuff. So he's absolutely right in that. And there's just, and it's interesting, you know, there's so much of like, oh, well, I guess I wasn't a good mother. And that's such a classic, actually, I'm not saying this is Sebastian's mom at all, but that is a very narcissistic personality disorder trait and tendency to say things like that, to be defensive in that way, and to take any criticism as oh, well, you hate me and I must be the worst, and well, you must not even want me as your mom, and blah 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 blah. Like, it really gets exaggerated that way. That's a very common thing. And even for people who don't have narcissistic personality disorder, I think a lot of parents, in their insecurity and their ego, can be bruised a little bit, and they can revert to making those assumptions or accusations toward their children, which really isn't fair. And I don't think in any instance you should do that, because I do think you should be open and receptive to potential criticism from your kids, or, you know, listening to their experience and their perspective, and that you might have done things wrong or you could have done things better. And I think people really struggle to hold dual perspectives of like, I know that I was trying really hard, but also maybe I didn't try my hardest. They're not entirely honest. They take very extreme and drastic sides on that, where it's like they feel like in order to defend themselves, they need to say, well, I did everything that I could and I was the best parent that I could possibly be. I couldn't have done anything better whatsoever. Or on the flip side, oh, I was the worst and I didn't do anything and oh my gosh, I suck so bad. But it's like somewhere in the middle, and I think you should be able to acknowledge like you have put in hard work and give yourself credit for that. But at the same time, that maybe you weren't always at your tip-top shape, and maybe what your kid is saying has some validity, and maybe you need to look at that, and maybe you could work on that and change that, and there's room for growth. And I think it's really hard for people to be impartial when it comes to judgment on their parents, on their parenting from their kids, and this is a good example of that for sure. But yeah, you also understand Sebastian's perspective of like, you know, and it's interesting because she protected him from the knowledge about his dad, which is yet another thing. That's a very common thing where there's like a piece of crucial information missing that really changes the perspective. And, you know, should she have told him? Should she have kept it from him? Was she protecting him by not saying it? Would it have been better for him to know? That's a big debate as well. But you can see you can see the trauma from his upbringing and being raised by his mom and the way that she is very clearly, especially when she came back to visit. And you just see it. It's just written all over him, and the way that they interact in all of their conversations, the tension, everything is there. It's so plain to see. So like, I understand where he's coming from entirely, but yeah, there's validity on both sides, and there's things that both of them could learn and change and grow a little bit with, but it's a very complicated, very complex, very intricate dynamic that is so multifaceted in so many ways. And obviously the race element just adds a whole host of other, you know, elements to it that are contributing factors in how complex this is that, you know, don't exist in white families' relationships or, you know, anything like that. So it's just, I mean, it's just, there's so much to think about. It's so thought-provoking. It is so rare that in media there are characters and dynamics that are this rich and this intricate and complicated, and not many people are right. You know, there's no right and wrong. It's very gray area, not so much black and white. It's very, you know, complex and interesting, and I just love this show for that, and this is one of many examples of dynamics like this. Then for the Coquette storyline, like, I don't even know what to say. It's horrific. You know, it is what it is. I completely understand, and as I said, someone had encouraged me to do a little research about the Canadian history of this, and I did, and it's just horrific. I don't know what else to say. It's the worst. I hate to see it. I'm glad they put it in the show, right? Like, I think that's good for that representation, especially if they are going to do, like, this area. It's nice that they added this element into it. Similarly to how they added Sebastian, they didn't technically have to do that, right? They didn't have to add these more complex or complicated or kind of sticky subjects about this time period and about this location, but they did. So I really admire them for doing that in the first place. And I think it also is a good parallel journey to Anne, where she's an outsider, so she can understand and empathize with a lot of these marginalized people and oppressed people more so than most, because of the upbringing that she's had and the life that she's lived and the way that she has been sidelined as well. So you see that empathy, and you see that being contagious to everyone around her, that the understanding and tolerance kind of spreads from her. And so it totally makes sense that, of course, like, she's on their side and she befriended Coquette and she's invested in all of this. I mean, her little monologue when she was like not wanting to leave them was heartbreaking. And what was even more heartbreaking was those sweet, I mean, they are so kind. That really touched me, that they were, pretending that it was okay so that Anne could go and feel okay about leaving and go back and return with Matthew and Marilla. And, that kind of a little bit of a sacrifice there where it's like, they can have their child. And I did mention that. I was like, Marilla's reunited with, her child, but they're not reunited with their child. And there's all this, it's just such pain and suffering. And I really hope they fix it by the end of the show, but I don't know if that would be accurate. And I don't know if they're going for full accuracy in that way, but it's tragic. It's horrific. I really, hate to see it, but again, it's important to show, and I think they've done a pretty good job. I mean, I'm not, I guess, the person to judge the accuracy or the sensitivity necessarily, but from my perspective, from what I understand, I do think they have hit on a lot of important topics, right? I love that her mom was so, when she was back, was so accepting and open to her difference in behavior and was really there for her and didn't kind of turn on her, because that's so easy for parents to do. And it's very interesting, the self-hatred that's imbued into her and that she starts to project onto her family and her community and her brother and whatnot after this experience. And that's also almost a protective measure as well, because it's like you need to learn to assimilate. You have to hide these things about you because people aren't going to like that, and you're not going to be successful, and you're not going to be able to do anything in the world if you are that way. But it's, it's heartbreaking to see the poison kind of seep into that and into her own view of herself and her family and her community. And that's just the insidiousness of it. It's so sick. I love the mom's speech, and I love that Marilla could understand it despite not being able to literally understand it. Like the passion and the ferventness and just like all of that, it's so, you recognize it, it's so human. It like transcends, barriers and boundaries of class and status and race and communities and whatnot. Seeing a mother in pain or a mother longing for her child, that's a universally recognizable and acknowledged feeling that I think most all women or moms can empathize with and can see and can recognize, and Marilla did in that instance, right? That's like it literally transcended a language barrier, you know what I mean? It was so much more impactful and meaningful than that. She didn't even need to verbalize it. She didn't even need to hear the words themselves, or to understand the words themselves to understand what was going on and what she was saying. And I thought that was a very touching and very profound moment. I really love her parents. I think I love those actors too. There's just something about them. You know what I mean? Like, I look at them and I feel such warmth from them and I feel such goodness. Like, there's just immaculate vibes, for lack of better terms. Like, I'm like, oh, period. But they're also just such good parents. It's really, really incredible how great of parents they are. It's at every turn they have done like the exact right thing. And they care so much, and you see that, and I just want them to be safe and happy, and I want Coquette to be returned to them. But I just don't know if that's realistic. But I truly, really want to see them all happy and safe and okay by the end of this. This whole thing has been a lot bleaker, honestly. This penultimate episode it's like pretty dark for the most part. Even the more, lighthearted parts, like Gilbert and Anne kind of missing each other and fumbling, ends up being a negative. Like, it's still something that you're like, that you're frustrated by or disappointed by or upset by. So, there's no success in that area, and it's a little less serious than the other topics. But then there's, the heaviness of Sebastian and his mom and that relationship, and then the Coquette storyline. It's just very dark at this point, which is true to life, and it's one of the things that I love about this show. I do feel that at every turn it's pretty true to life and pretty representative, but I am interested and excited to see a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel, because in true Anne with an E fashion, I think they do a really good job of balancing that and showing hope while also like holding a mirror up to some of the nastier parts of humanity and society. So I hope to see, the hope prevail in the finale, and see some good with some of the bad, because this whole episode was a lot of bad. It was pretty dark. One of the darkest kind of penultimate episodes I can think of. So I really hope that there's at least some sort of happy ending to all of these storylines, because that's the thing. I don't want it to just be, because I know that Anne and Gilbert are going to have a happy ending. Like, I know that. But I don't want it to just be them. I want everyone to be in a good place. Or at least in a better place. I mean, whew, my gosh. So I'm hopeful to see that. I'm interested to see how they wrap this all up. And I will see you again soon for Anne with an E. Thank you so much for all your support. Again, full-length reactions are on Patreon, link down below if you are interested in that. Give me your thoughts about this episode, about the season, about the finale, about the pacing, anything and everything that you would like to say about Anne with an E. Comment down below, and I will see you again soon.